often say welcome, I'm almost inviting the silence, the stillness, welcoming in the present moment, inviting to let go of the day, the previous conversation you've had, in person or in your head. Let go of thoughts, and to welcome and to allow yourself to be present, to be still. Almost giving permission. I can, for these next 20, 30, 40 minutes, I don't have to think about anything. You can just simply ease into the lightness of now. All is there to think about? What's more important than this moment? Another way to look at it is allowing the present moment to envelop you, to almost like a weighted blanket. It allows you to almost relax. With the weighted blanket, it almost tells the body that, you can relax now. There's almost a security, comfort feeling from it, and this is in the same way as almost allowing the mind to relax as well, allowing the stillness to gently quiet the mind. To allow the attention to wander into the inner body, and without effort to try and feel the whole body, just simply allow the attention to go there and allow whatever arises to arise. If there is sensation there, just simply allow it to be. If there is not, there is not. That's okay too. Give yourself permission to completely let go of everything. Maybe you can check in with your face and see, is anything tense? Is there any holding happening? Is it possible to soften the brow? Maybe even go as far as allowing a light smile to play on the lips. Recently I've been enjoying the practice of not being in a habit of looking at the time. Sometimes we decide on doing something and first we look at the time and think, oh. Sometimes time has its practical use of, you may only have a certain amount of hours before something needs to be done, but quite often, especially when you're at home, or time is not so important, but the habit is still there of, there may be subtleties there as well as you look at the time and you think, you may feel an emotion from the time. You may feel that you've not done enough today to reach this point. You should have done more. Or there may be a feeling that it's going really slow today. How can it only be this time? Or quite often it's, how did that time go by? You know, I've just woken up and it's the afternoon. Where did all that time go? And again, there's an emotion, there's a thoughts and emotion. And it can be useful to use the present moment, a place of no time. It's always the present moment. And just see how that feels. And you may find that looking at the time, there's almost some space around it. Whatever the time is okay. You know, your eyes may wander, if you're on the laptop, it may wander to the top corner and catch the time, and you may have a thought that, well, it doesn't really matter all that much. You know, I see people, sometimes they are, you know, look at their wrist several times, and then 20 minutes later, look at the time again. And it's almost, a constraining feeling of that, a feeling of constraint of, okay, it's this time now, and then you go to do something and, okay, it's this time now, you've taken this long to do it, and there's a lack of freedom there, a lack of, perhaps it's the mind looking at the time, wanting to know the time. So maybe when that urge does come up to check the time, you can maybe, before doing so, just go into space and ask yourself, do I need to know the time at the moment? Does it matter? Because often it can evoke thought. It can be an activation of thought. When you look at the time, thoughts may arise from that, to process that and to what association it has. Often we have different associations of time, and if it's late in the evening, we may automatically think, okay, it's time to watch a movie and relax now, it's the evening time. Or a certain time of the day where you may do an activity. Sometimes it can provoke thought. The same goes for the days of the week as well. Whenever it's a Saturday or Sunday, especially a Sunday, I feel less inclined to be more productive. And really it's just another day. It's just the present moment. Okay, so we're going to continue reading from The Miracle of Mindfulness, and I'm aware that I did set the intention last episode to record sooner than later, but it seems as if 5 days have gone by without that happening. So I just realised my Kindle needs to be charged, so excuse the noise. I'm just going to plug it in and see if I'm able to read it at the same time. Okay. As I mentioned before, for any new listeners, I don't edit these episodes, so if you hear me fidgeting or doing things like this, plugging in, charging up something, and it's not just so it's creating some authenticity to this. I'll silence my phone as well. And it's more of my maybe laziness is not the right word, but I'm quite uninterested in creating a very polished product where everything is very slick, and it's more about the essence of these episodes instead of anything else. And for me personally, recording these is it is a meditation. It is a space to be present, to follow pointings, and so it's not some entertainment piece where perhaps the quality of production is important, to have perhaps a little jingle at the start, and to have that quality to it. And I find that with this type of content and what I'm doing, it's for me, I feel it's less important. As long as the words are clear and they can be heard, that's the only thing needed. So we talked about mindfulness of the mind last episode, and we talked about being aware of thoughts and feelings, and again, just to reread a line from that, we are like a palace guard who is aware of every face that passes through the front corridor. So we are the guard to the mind, so if anything passes through, thoughts, feelings, they are recognized and acknowledged. So this next passage is called The Guard or the Monkey's Shadow. While practicing mindfulness, don't be dominated by the distinction between good and evil, thus creating a battle within oneself. Whenever a wholesome thought arises, acknowledge it. A wholesome thought has just arisen. And if an unwholesome thought arises, acknowledge it as well. An unwholesome thought has just arisen. Don't dwell on it or try to get rid of it, however much you don't like it. To acknowledge it is enough. If you have departed, then you must know that you have departed. And if you are still there, know that you are still there. Once you have reached such an awareness, there will be nothing you need to fear anymore. When I mentioned the guard at the Emperor's Gate, perhaps you imagined a front corridor with 2 doors, 1 entrance and 1 exit, with your mind as the guard. Whatever feeling or thought enters, you are aware of its entrance, and when it leaves, you are aware of its exit. But the image has a shortcoming. It suggests that those who enter and exit the corridor are different from the guard. In fact, our thoughts and feelings are us. They are a part of ourselves. There is a temptation to look upon them, or at least some of them, as an enemy force which is trying to disturb the concentration and understanding of your mind. But, in fact, when we are angry, we ourselves are anger. When we are happy, we ourselves are happiness. When we have certain thoughts, we are those certain thoughts. We are both the guard and the visitor at the same time. We are both the mind and the observer of the mind. Therefore, chasing away or dwelling on any thought isn't the important thing. The important thing is to be aware of the thought. This observation is not an objectification of the mind. It does not establish distinction between subject and object. Mind does not grab on to mind. Mind does not push mind away. Mind can only observe itself. This observation isn't an observation of some object outside and independent of the observer. Remember the koan of the Zen master back and who asked, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Or take the example of the taste the tongue experiences. What separates taste and taste bud? The mind experiences itself directly within itself. This is of special importance, and so in the Sutra of Mindfulness, Buddha always uses the phrasing mindfulness of feeling in feeling, mindfulness of mind in mind. Some have said that the Buddha used phrasing in order to put emphasis on such words as feeling and mind, but I don't think they have fully grasped the Buddha's intention. Mindfulness of feeling in feeling is mindfulness of feeling directly while experiencing feeling, and certainly not contemplation of some image of feeling. which one creates to give feeling some objective, separate existence of its own outside of oneself. Descriptive words make it sound like a riddle or paradox or tongue twister. Mindfulness of feeling in feeling is the mind experiencing mindfulness of the mind in the mind. The objectivity of the outside observer is to examine something in the method of science, but it is not the method of meditation. Thus, the image of the guard and the visitor fails to illustrate adequately the mindful observation of the mind. The mind is like a monkey swinging from branch to branch through a forest, says the sutra. In order not to lose sight of the monkey by some sudden movement, we must watch the monkey constantly and even be one with it. Mind contemplating mind is like an object and its shadow. The object cannot shake the shadow off. The two are one. Wherever the mind goes, it still lies in the harness of the mind. The sutra sometimes uses the expression, bind the monkey, to refer to taking hold of the mind. But the monkey image is only a means of expression. Once the mind is directly and continually aware of itself, it is no longer like a monkey. There are not two minds, one which swings from branch to branch, and another which follows after it to bind it with a piece of rope. The person who practices meditation usually hopes to see into his or her own nature in order to obtain awakening. But if you are just beginning, don't wait to see into your own nature. Better yet, don't wait for anything. Especially don't wait to see the Buddha or any version of ultimate reality while you're sitting. In the first 6 months, try only to build up your power of concentration, to create an inner calmness and serene joy. You will shake off anxiety, enjoy total rest, and quiet your mind. You will be refreshed and gain a broader, clearer view of things, and deepen and strengthen the love in yourself. And you will be able to respond more helpfully to all around you. Sitting in meditation is nourishment for your spirit and nourishment for your body as well. Though sitting, our bodies obtain harmony, feel lighter, and are more at peace. The path from the observation of your mind to seeing into your own nature won't be too rough. Once you are able to quiet your mind, once your feelings and thoughts no longer disturb you, at that point your mind will begin to dwell in mind. Your mind will take hold of mind in a direct and wondrous way, which no longer differentiates between subject and object. Drinking a cup of tea, the seeming distinction between the one who drinks and the tea being drunk evaporates. Drinking a cup of tea becomes a direct and wondrous experience in which the distinction between subject and object no longer exists. Dispersed mind is also mind, just as waves rippling in water are also water. When mind has taken hold of mind, deluded mind becomes true mind. true mind is our real self, is the Buddha, the pure oneness which cannot be cut up by the illusory divisions of separate selves, created by concepts and language. But I don't want to say a lot about this. And that's the end of that passage. And I would like to just go into it a little bit more, just to even clarify my own understanding of it. So here it is talking about direct experience, where there is no subject and object. And one thing to note here is a word you may read in one spiritual book can mean something else in another. For example, here it is used mind within mind, but elsewhere we've talked about, being in awareness of the mind. So, as far as I understand it, these are all the same things. The word mind is being used here, but that direct experience, perhaps you can also use the word of awareness as well. Where there is no subject and object, there is just subject. And you are one with what is being observed. Meaning there is no you looking at somebody else. There is just what is there in the space of awareness. And there was the mention of 6 months as well, and just wanted to touch upon that because, that can sound very overwhelming, 6 months of, and again it's just to bear in mind that these passages were, as I understand it, letters to his close friend. And of course they made this book so it could be understood for more as well. So, and I find everyone will have their own path. For some, having a prescriptive practice such as this is, in this book it's talking about the prescriptive practice of the mindful breathing and for how long to do it each day, and here it's mentioning about you almost shaping your mind over 6 months, getting into the habit of quieting it, and then it will be easier to understand your own nature once you've done the 6 months. So I myself can are quite sensitive to these things. When I read something and it mentions something, I may react to it by having a thought of, I can't do that for 6 months, or it doesn't, it may not sound right to me to follow this practice directly. So, as a suggestion, just simply take from whatever's being read, if something resonates and you feel that this is something I can do and feels right, by all means absorb that. And if there's something that creates pain, perhaps this can be looked at further on, whether it's a decision to let this go, to not take on that practice, or it's something to explore further as well. Often, we can have, I very much have the habit of, if I read something and it gives an instruction, then I feel like I have to follow it. This is I don't have a choice. So just to bear that in mind, that this is obviously from Buddhist teachings, a Buddhist perspective, and it's an offering almost as well. It's not saying this must be done, it's an offering. And some people will be able to connect to this and immediately, feel like, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. I want, a systematic, specific practice where I can schedule, 2 hours here and an hour there, and I can measure over 6 months how I'm doing. And for others, they may, that's the last thing they may want. So just simply tune into yourself and just be okay with whatever resonates, and what doesn't resonate, be okay with letting that go. And you can always be flexible as well. My personal approach to this book is being flexible with it. I probably don't have the, in regards to my mental health and my background of being in a kind of a strict practice, religious practice before. I find I do better with something that's not as prescriptive, such as a lot of Eckhart's teachings, for example. I resonate a lot with that because it's almost the opposite of where I've come from. So I can almost relax into those teachings and absorb them. So just as the last words there, be kind to yourself as well. And I find it's almost automatic when you are in a state of presence. When something resonates, it's an automatic thing. You're aware of it. Oh yes, I can use this. And when something doesn't, there may be a bit of resistance to that, and just allow that to be. Allow to let go if that's what's needed. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I wish you well, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.